Hi, it's Jason here to tell you 5 things I like about this year's game, Echo Generation 2. The voxel graphics are definitely an improvement over the original, although the original's graphics weren't so bad either. The backgrounds and the set pieces are just amazing, particularly later on in the game. The deck building is a welcome surprise. While the original game was turn-based, it was character-based and did not use a card system. So essentially, you collect cards for each character you play as over 6 distinct chapters. Some cards heal, some offer distinct character-specific buffs, and others do damage either on their own or in conjunction with other cards. There's a big emphasis on synergy, which really comes into play on the hard mode difficulty. Another aspect to the deck building is stance symbols. Each card has its own category designated by a symbol, and if your card symbol matches the symbols the boss is showing, then you essentially can break their shields and do more high damage attacks. This encourages diversity of skills without necessarily railroading into one specific approach, and really adds to the depth of combat. I could go on and on about deck building, but I have a life. Just kidding, I don't. However, there are combat guides that go into greater depth if you wish to learn more information. Which brings me to balance. The game is a little on the easy side in my opinion, but it did offer enough of a challenge without being too mindless. One thing to keep in mind, without spoiling anything, is that the last chapter on hard is challenging if you are not prepared. So ideally, you want to fight all enemies you encounter, and take the time to allocate your skill points. The characters are quite balanced too, and while you will encounter some RNG on your travels, it really doesn't feel rage-inducing. Speaking of characters, they are unique in terms of the cards you can collect and the synergies they offer. Unfortunately, not all of the characters have their own wind-up attacks in terms of the buttons you press in order to maximize damage. This is somewhat of a wasted opportunity, but I wouldn't consider it a deal breaker. Thankfully, the time button presses to block damage is still present, and the way it is presented is ideal for filthy casuals like myself. I could go on about the backstory and the lore of the characters, but I can't really be bothered. So, let's move on to the story. The story for the first game, based in the 90s, is essentially the Ancient Aliens meme. But the second does at least have some consistency in the sense that it follows along from one of the notable characters from the first game. The story chapters are loosely connected at first, but the narrative does intertwine in the later chapters. If you have Xbox Game Pass and/or if you like Slay the Spire or just roguelikes in general, it's well worth a go. If you got this far, thanks for watching, and if you didn't, then maybe you are just from a different generation. Peace out.